So before I start getting into it today, I want to have a quick recap of where we got to. So probably the easiest way to do that is to run and show you what we've got at the moment. I'm going to click on index and run from this. So this is the index in the ToDo controller. So we started out by making our model of a ToDo, and in that model we added a reference to the user, and then we made a controller that would allow us to create ToDo items, and it also allows us to view the items. So here is the index. I'm going to log in. So I seeded the database with this user and password, and then I'm going to go to ToDos, and I can see the ToDo items that this user has created. But to create a new one, I've got to click Create New. I've got to type my description in here. And then I click Create. And then it comes back to this original page, which is not a very nice interface. What I'm aiming for is to have some kind of text box down here that when I enter in an item, it just appears, so that it only updates this small page. The other thing that's a bit annoying is that from the home page, there's no way of navigating to the to-do list, which is something else I want to add today. So the two things we're going to try and do is we're going to just first quickly add some, or edit this nav bar at the top, and then we're going to make it so that we don't have to go to another page to enter an item on the to-do list. We're going to make it so it works with an AJAX call, that it just updates the area of the web page that needs updating. So I have a cup of tea and I am ready to do this. So let's go. I'm going to stop this running. Right, so first let's sort out this nav bar. The first question is, where is this nav bar actually coming from? And we can, this is actually, it's coming from the layout. So if we go into views, where is it? So we have shared, which hopefully makes sense to you that these are views that are shared among all the different views. Excuse me. So what we've got, whenever you see a view that has starts with an underscore, what that's telling you is it's not a full view on its own. And in this case, it's telling you that this is a layout. So if we open the layout, then what we have is we can see this div here. I'll tell you what, let's look at this. If you haven't used Chrome Developer Tools before, they're really useful. I'm going to open up Developer Tools. Let's move this into a separate window so it's a bit easier for you to see. So what's quite cool is that we're seeing here the HTML that has been actually rendered by the view. Remember, this file here is not a HTML file. It's a CS HTML. It's written in Razor, which is the kind of, I don't know if you call it scripting language, but it's the syntax that's used to make to draw the views, to make the views, and it allows you to mix quite nicely between HTML and C# or JavaScript. So whenever you see an @ symbol, that means you're going to your C# syntax. So here, if we've got @viewBag, and you can see that viewBag is a type, is actually an object, and then .title is the title from the viewBag. And there's other things here like HTML is a class that has lots of helpers in, which you'll be using a lot. And we will definitely be using that a lot today. So let's find this nav bar. So this what we're seeing here is the HTML that was rendered by .NET, and then that's what our browser then itself renders, and that's what you see. So let's have a look. So it's going to be in the body. So what's quite nice, if I've clicked on elements and I can mouse over all these elements. It will highlight on the page where they are. So here we go. So div, class, navbar, inverse, navbar, fixed top. So this is what we need to find and change. So I'm going to minimize that. Minimize that. So it's here. So we've got navbar, navbar inverse, navbar fixed top. And what we've got is you can see how this is working. So we've got application name, home, contact, about, home, about, contact, and then our kind of login details here. So let's find those. So here we go. First we've got HTML link, application name. Let's change that to do application. I know that's a boring name, but hey ho. And then we have these action links here. So this is an example of a HTML helper. And a HTML helper, well, it helps you write HTML exactly like it sounds. So this method here, action link, creates a link to a controller action. So remember we said last time that when you're navigating a website that's been made with ASP.NET MVC, the path at the end of the URL doesn't point to a file. What that does is that is interpreted, and then a route table looks up which controller action to perform based on the path that you give it. It's not going to a file. It's not like a file system that it's looking at. Now, those routes are mainly done via convention. So if we look at ToDos, we have, well, if we go to look at the controller first. So we have our ToDos controller has various things, details, and actually you can see it's what's written here is the path, the like conventional path that's going to get you to this action. So to get to details, ToDos, which is the controller name, and then details, which is this method, and then at the end this is an argument which is ID. That the 5, there's a special, the default routing allows you to put this ID on, basically. Now, if we had to manually write the path in, if we change something like the name of the controller, or we decided we wanted a custom route because the paths or the URLs that would be generated by the convention were like ugly or really hard to use, then we'd have to keep manually updating the link in here. Instead, what the action link does is we tell it a method and a controller, and it automatically generates the HTML that will get you that controller. So I don't really want an about and a contact page, so I'm going to get rid of those. So we want HTML. We want to go to the to-do controller, and we want to go to the to-do controller index. And so this takes 3 arguments. The first one, I always get these mixed up. So let's so link text. So we start off with what we actually want the user to see for the link. So my to-do list, let's say that to-do list. Then we want the action name, which is index, because that's what we want. We want the user to go straight to there. And then the actual controller name itself. So we want that to be ToDos. Right, that should be it. So I'm going to exit that, run it. And there we go. So we've got a home button. It's changed the application. I don't think I really want that home button either. We'll get rid of that in a minute. So let's see what it did. So we go here into the nav bar. So here we go. Right. So this is where we're looking. So what it's done is it's made a link that goes to /todos. And so if I'm logged in, I can click on my to-dos list. And there we go. We're at that page and I don't have to keep typing in to-dos. So let's stop this. I'm going to remove this home thing because I don't like it. We've already got the application name. You click on that and it takes you home. So why are we repeating it? I'm going to run it because I made a change. I want to make sure I didn't screw something up. Cool. Right, that's done. So that's starting to look a bit nicer. Like at some point we can get rid of this stuff. Maybe you actually want to launch straight into your to-do list. You don't want to come to this home page. That's up to you. Like this framework's pretty flexible. It's very flexible, in fact. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to think about the interface for adding a to-do. We want to recreate, as I said from the start, this interface from Trello, which is I click add an item, there's a text box, I type something in, push enter, and it updates there. I'm not going to a different page. The page isn't refreshing. It's just updating what needs to be updated. And that screams AJAX, and which is exactly what AJAX is designed to do. Is that we'll have some JavaScript code that will create those. That will create. We'll just update the relevant part of your web page, not all of it. It'll do the HTTP request in the behind the scenes for you. So let's have a look where our table is built at the moment. It's going to be built in the index. So this is our index in to-dos. And we can see we've got class table. So here, between here and here is what's making the table. Now I want to take a little bit of time of looking at this. So at the top here, we've got this line that says @model IEnumerable to-do list.models.todo. So what that's telling this particular view is to expect a list of to-dos, a list of these. It's then looping, well, once it has this model, this to-do model, there is a bunch of metadata associated with the to-do. And we might end up adding our own metadata to this, which you do with data annotations, which you'll be doing in here. But for now, we're not going to. And so when it says here display name for model description, we could define a display name here for description that makes more sense, and it would render that knowing that the model was a to-do. And then what it does is it says for each item in model, and it goes around, it loops around, and it builds a HTML table. And you've got this kind of display for, it's figuring out, it sees that this is a string, so it knows it's text. This one, it sees it's a Boolean, so it makes something that's relevant for a Boolean. And it's doing that for you. It's quite powerful. What we want to do is we want to be able to change this whole table with a separate function. Yeah, we want to be able to create this with a JavaScript function when it updates and put it in this space. And the way we do that is using an AJAX call. And what an AJAX call does is it will send out a request, a HTTP request, and then it gets a response, which would usually be HTML. Maybe it would be a JSON or XML. In our case, it's going to be HTML. And it will take that HTML and replace the contents of some element in your on your current page with that HTML and update it. And that's like, you can get really good, rich user interaction with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is define a div here. So I'm going to say div class. I'm going to call it ID equals table div. And what this is going to be is I'm going to want the table to appear here in this div. But the table I want to be defined outside of this view. And I'm going to define that in a partial view. So I'm going to right click on ToDos, add view. And I'm going to create it as a partial view. And the name, I'm going to name it, I'm going to put an underscore so I know it's a partial view, and call it ToDo table. And I'm going to create it with a model. Actually, no, I'm going to create empty of that model. I'm going to do this myself. So create as a partial view, add. Okay, so I've got an empty view. Right, so I'm going to copy this out of here, save that, and into here. So this is going to, well, we haven't defined the model, so it's not going to know what it is. So we have to include this line to tell the system that that's what you should be expecting as a model. And so this is basically, I've just copied that table, put it in there. And now I need a way of actually putting or building that table. I need a function that I can run in my controller that will build this table and return it as valid HTML. So let's go to the controller. I'm going to do it under index because it's going to be basically the same. We need a public action result. We'll call this build ToDo table. Okay. What I'm going to do, so what we're actually, it's going to be the same as this, same as the index, except we're going to return a partial view, and then we need to tell it what partial view to return. So we're going to do ToDo table. I'm going to enter that to make it a bit cleaner. Okay, so this function is very much like the index function. In fact, it's exactly the same. The only difference is instead of returning a full view, we're returning a partial view, which the partial view is ToDo table. So this bit here. And we're still doing, like, the first argument is the view that you want, and the second one is what the model we're giving it. And we know that this expects an IEnumeral of the ToDos, which is what this will give you, this inquiry. Now, if we were to just call that, it would return basically some HTML just on its own. And it wouldn't have, the thing that separates a view from a partial view is that when you return a view, it also includes the full layout. So you have different layouts for different views, and everything to start with uses the original one. And that's why when we navigate to the ToDo controller, like index, you still see the nav bar. We didn't put, the nav bar isn't in this index. But if we look at, if I still got this open, let's go to shared layout. If you look, there's a line here called render body. And what that does is that's where the view ends up. So in this render body, that's where this is going to end up, is there. And so when you return a view, it expects to first build this layout and then do the view that you wanted and shove it in where it says render view. Whereas a partial view, it's just going to make the HTML and return that as it is. So we've got that. At the moment, this is going to do nothing because nothing's actually nothing's going to run. Like, it's just we're going to get an empty div. So what we need to do is we need to write some JavaScript to do this for us. And to do that, we're going to be using AJAX. And so what we need to do is we need to actually import the AJAX package first. So you do that by in the package control console install package Microsoft.jQuery.unobtrusive.ajax. Hopefully I spelled that right. Yep, okay, so now AJAX will work. So what do we need? Where should we start? Let's start by making the JavaScript. So I'm going to build, for this, we've got our scripts. I'm going to put it in, I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call it custom scripts. Okay, and I'm going to put it in there so we can separate the scripts that we've made from the scripts that are part of all these packages. So I'm going to add a JavaScript file, and I'm going to call this. I'm going to call this build table. So there we've got our JavaScript. Now what we want at the moment is we want this build table to be called as soon as this page is finished loading. So what's going to happen? This page is going to load, and there's going to be an empty div. We then want our JavaScript to call build to do table, get the HTML that's generated, and then put it in the div that's already there. If we didn't wait for the page to load, that div might not exist and it wouldn't work. And there's a easy way of doing this with jQuery, which is quite nice. If I can remember. Right, so it is the $sign is an alias for jQuery. Document.ready, and then we're going to put a function in here, and in this function is all the stuff we want to do. I'm just going to put that in there. So what we want to do is we want to make an AJAX call, and I'm going to do this using the jQuery kind of interface, or I don't know what you call it, API I guess, or for AJAX. So we're going to call AJAX, and then we're going to give it some arguments. So the AJAX call, the first argument we're going to give it is the URL that we want it to actually, the URL we want the AJAX call to send a request to, and that's going to be ToDos build table. Build to do table. That's what we called it, I think. To do controller, build to do table. Yeah. Do you know what? I'm going to be sure. Okay, so that's the first argument. And then we want to tell it what to do on the success. And that, you're basically giving this AJAX call a function to perform from the result. So the result is going to be what the AJAX call got from the query. So it's, or from the HTTP request. So it got a response, and that's going to be in result. And then we're going to use some jQuery to change the div. So we called it table div. We're going to make the HTML result. So that should be it. So what this is doing, we're doing, when the document is loaded, we're going to do an AJAX call, or AJAX request, I guess, and to this URL, and then the result we get back, we're going to put it in table div, which is defined here. At the moment, that's not going to do anything because we're not calling this anywhere, and so we need to add a call to the script in our index view. So what we do, let's have a look. I just want to show you something else. If you look at layouts, notice there's a render section scripts required equals false. If we have any scripts we want to add, we need to add them to the scripts section. Otherwise, they'd appear before we load jQuery and Bootstrap and all these other things. And that means it wouldn't work because jQuery needs to be loaded before we can do any jQuery. So we need to make sure we put it in the proper section. So I'm going to do section scripts. So script source equals, what's quite nice is when you do this, it gives you can just navigate to it. So custom scripts, build tables, close that. The other thing we want to load is we want to load, do we want to load this? Yes, we want to load the jQuery, sorry, AJAX itself. So let's do script source equals, that's going to be in scripts because that's something that we didn't make, and it's unobtrusive AJAX min. So we want the minified one. Okay, so has that done everything? So what's going to happen is that the index is going to load. Initially, nothing's going to be there. The table div is going to be empty. Then, because we've loaded this script is going to run. It's going to check that the document is ready. It's going to do an AJAX request where it's going to send a request to this URL, and the result it gets back, it's going to put it in that table. So let's see if this works. Okay, so let's have a check. So these are all the to-dos that we've created as this user. But I want to look to convince you this is actually doing what I said. If we look at here, we can see we've got table div. So now you can see that inside we've got our table that was created from that partial view. And that's a key difference from how it was set up before. And this is what's going to enable us to have the interface where we can add items by typing and pushing enter. And it's only going to update that table. And in fact, we're going to end up using this function build table quite a lot for various different things when we want to update that table dynamically. Okay, I'm going to leave this video at this point, and there's quite a lot to cover with the AJAX calls. As always, any questions, ask me. And I will get the new video up as soon as I've done it. Thank you.